Sorry, take two. Had some difficulties with the other one. We'll give it a minute for some people to tune in since we've just started. I apologise, we're 5 minutes late. We had some stuff going on. Hey boy. Alright, so today's topic, I wanted to talk about physical self-defence in relation to domestic abuse, domestic violence, and the limitations of physical self-defence and the reasons for those limitations in a domestic environment where there's violence. The reason I want to talk about this is due to the misconceptions that people have of domestic abuse, violence, and of self-defence in regards to that. Firstly, I'd also like to say to everyone just before we start, thank you for watching, and if you do find these videos beneficial, can you please consider subscribing to our YouTube and sharing the videos as well. Okay, so to get into the topic, a big thing with domestic violence, with the limitations of the physical self-defence, comes down to when you look at a lot of physical violence and aggression within a relationship. A lot of what's happening is there's a lot of coercion and control, and a lot of the time actually isn't physical. So you're looking at financial control, control of movements, isolation of the person, where they're broken away from their family, friends, and they become quite isolated. Other things you're looking at, coercive controls where, there's threats that if you do this, I'll release information, you'll lose your job, you'll lose your friends, and control even through things like kids as well, which is a big reason that a lot of physical self-defence with schools and teachings really isn't entirely applicable within the teachings with physical self-defence, which is why I believe it's very important looking at these issues that if you're looking at self-defence, you really need to look at covering the soft skills as well. So earlier today on our Facebook page, and if anyone wants to go back and look on the YouTube channel, we did a video a while ago about the who, what, when, where, why. And this ties in very big with what I'm going to talk about today, because you start looking at things like the who, what, when, where, and how and why, and it becomes very applicable that just going boom is not always necessarily the best option or easiest option, especially in a domestic abuse situation or a violence situation. And again, it's going to break down to the severity of the violence, even if it is physical. For instance, if there was a physical thing and it was simply just a slap, and I'm not, when I say simply just a slap, I don't want to minimise what's happened, because obviously any violence or abuse is abhorrent. Like, it doesn't matter whether it is just a slap or it's a bang, bang, bang beating. Obviously, none of it is appropriate or acceptable. But if we start looking at the situation, for instance, that if it is a slap and it's just a single slap, you've got to start asking questions like, if you were taught things like, boom, slap back, where's that going to lead? Who are you doing it to? How's it happened? Where's it going to lead to? For instance, if you were just to get slapped, but then slapped back, is that going to lead to making the other person angrier? And then instead of just being a slap, is that going to lead then to an actual beating? If it is an actual beating, people talk about, well, cover up, do this, why don't they gouge out the eye? Why don't they, throat punch and roll them over? The reality is, you've got to remember there's a lot of emotional baggage going on too. So you're also dealing with someone who you're very emotionally attached to. And again, like, you're in a situation where you're locked in a house. The reality is, you're not going to eye gouge this person, roll them over, and be safe. The reality is, if you were going to do that, you would have to leave the house And do you really want to go back? And that ties back into the idea of, if you're isolated, if there's financial control, it's highly unlikely that's going to be appropriate or ever happen. So some of the skills you want to start looking at are more the softer skills. So, even if it was a single slap, you're not going to do the whole simultaneous block and bang. You want to start looking at other tactics beyond your traditional self-defense, physical self-defense, because a lot of the time it's just not going to be appropriate. And then too, there's the whole emotional abuse. Like, one day it's the slap, and then the next day it's flowers and, oh, I love you, I just get so angry, I don't mean to do it, which again is manipulative tactics that play on a person. But if you're looking at, like from a self-defense point of view in an abusive relationship, first and foremost, people need to consider the ideas of escape plans. Like, are they putting money away? Is there plans to get out? How are they going to get out? Where are they going to go? A lot of people become so isolated and afraid that they can't just leave. If you are going to leave, it's exceptionally hard if you've got kids, for instance. But if you look into it too, and then you move into the physical side, and then there's a slap or a couple of slaps, and then you've got the kids in the next room. And then you're talking about, why don't they just eye gouge and throat punch, knee and run out? Like, obviously, again, you've got, especially if there's kids, there's 2, 3, 4 other people you're thinking about. And again, if what you do isn't effective, is that just going to make the person more angry, which is going to increase the aggression of their attack on you? Which is why you really need to look at the applicabilities. If you're ever teaching self-defense, looking at the applicability of and the limitations of physical self-defense, depending on who the people are and where the violence is happening and what's happening. So there's all kinds of strategies that you can start looking at from here. Again, it's not as exciting to teach in a class, I suppose. But things you want to start looking at are things like, for instance, if it is just a slap, or before it gets to a slap, are you creating distance? Are you trying to de-escalate? Is it possible to try find a way out of the house for half an hour? Can you stay at work long? And again, these are solutions, and I'm not saying they're like solutions to fix the problem. I mean, obviously, if you've got a problem with domestic abuse, you want to be long-term or short-term, medium-term, trying to look at getting out of that situation entirely, which again becomes hard when people say, like, why didn't the person just leave? Well, when they feel they've got no money, they're under control, they've got no one around to talk to or turn to or run to. So again, that's what starts making all of this hard. But when it comes down to things, so you want to put some distance between the person, you're trying to de-escalate. Now, if it is something, for instance, and you can't do that, and it becomes a very, very violent attack, I mean, you even want to look at things like, again, not, the whole perception of people like the throat punch and the knee. You're really going to have to start looking at barricading into a bathroom or getting out of that situation, away from it for the time being, before it escalates to that level. Unfortunately, with domestic violence and abuse, the hard thing is that there is no hard and fast answers, and what sort of really upsets me about it all is self-defense schools that are teaching these ideas that, like, look, listen, if the person is boom, they're not really taking into the account the reality of the fact that you're living with this person, and you're going to go to bed that night with them in the house with you. I mean, it's a very tough situation that isn't really fixed with the physical side of self-defense. It's not as easy as just hitting or punching or blocking. So, it's really a big issue that there's a lot more to it than just the physical side of self-defense, which I think is very much overlooked in self-defense. And I think when you look at holistic self-defense in schools, it's not something that's really touched on or talked about a lot or talked about properly. So look, I hope this has given a little bit of insight into the limitations of physical self-defense within a domestic abuse situation, and why it's not always appropriate or easy. Hopefully down the track, I'll do some more videos looking at other ways, measures, means of people attempting to or to keep themselves safer in an abusive or a violent domestic relationship. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this a little bit helpful, and until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other, and stay safe. Thank you.